So the press has kind of run wild with that, and the misrepresentation of what is and isn't an electric bike in the press it's become quite damaging, actually. Even where I've noticed the press have started to improve the dialogue, they're still using the word e-bike in headlines, and as we know, people have a relatively short attention span, generally about 140 characters of a tweet. So this is, I think, caught the attention of insurers who you'd like to think would be based on data and an assessment of risks. It doesn't seem to have gone that way, because I've looked at the data. Standard e-bikes that I think most of the industry is invested in, there is a next to zero rate of these fires. Yeah. It's only when they're tampered with or kits are bought that perhaps there's an instance of it. And I think that there'll be a study out next year that will go further to prove it.
Welcome to Ride Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. In the podcast, I explore cycling's global trends, community needs, innovative business strategies, and the journeys of remarkable individuals in the world of cycling. You are listening to a limited series of recordings during Rouleur Live 2024. This limited series has 11 episodes, and in each episode, the guests are asked 4 key questions. Each of my guests has different insights into where the opportunities for success in the cycling industry lie. So make sure you to subscribe and follow so you'll get notified of new podcasts, because they will be released in quick succession. In this episode, I'm talking with Mark Sutton. He's the managing editor at Cycling Electric. He's a freelancer, writer, and consultant with over 2 decades of experience, and he reveals great insights into the industry in its present state and what needs to be improved. So make sure you subscribe, follow the podcast wherever you listen to it, so you can be notified of each and every episode. Thank you for listening. Now, back to the show.
For those that don't know me, I'm Mark Sutton, a journalist in the bike industry of the best part of 20 years now. I was the founder of Cycling Industry News and more recently the founder of Cycling Electric magazine as well. Yeah, my focus nowadays is mostly on the e-bike, but I keep a toe in the industry side too.
Very good. So Mark, where should cycling companies prioritize their spending when aiming to drive brand visibility and engagement?
I think maybe everywhere that we haven't put money before. The bike industry, even sort of 5 to 10 years ago, you'd walk into Eurobike and look up to the rafters, and you perhaps sort of see the branding was quite narrowly focused. Lots of aerodynamic swooshes and things like that. We're getting slowly better at changing our imagery and who we visibly put out there in our marketing, I think. So the short answer to that question is the bike industry should be targeting everyone who hasn't targeted before. For starters, that's a lot of women. We've had quite a lot of success with targeting those with sort of mobility issues, particularly trikes and balance. E-bikes have opened the door to older demographics. It's probably the only area of technology where it started with the older demographic and has come down to the youth. I think it's interesting that in future, when people have their first experience of cycling, there's a good chance it's going to be an e-bike. So yeah, I think we've got to reach the masses. I think it's big blue ocean time and not so narrow.
Very good. So there is a question that you have alerted me to, and I think it's quite pertinent to ask. What is the current situation with e-bike insurance for retailers, small independent retailers holding stock and inventory in their shops?
So to take people back to the beginning of this story, essentially the UK has shall we say, a bit of press animosity towards cycling. We've found it very hard traditionally to shape things. You don't pay road tax and you shouldn't be on the road, things like that. That hasn't gone away. I think it's just developed in the press for whatever reason that may be. And of course, now we have a situation where some of the direct market imports of conversion kits and universal chargers, which are perhaps not universal, they're causing some fires. And of course, there's the issue of sort of speeding, which, on a standard e-bike, you're not going to get. So the press has kind of run wild with that, and the misrepresentation of what is and isn't an electric bike in the press it's become quite damaging, actually. Even where I've noticed the press have started to improve the dialogue, they're still using the word e-bike in headlines. And as we know, people have a relatively short attention span, generally about 140 characters of a tweet. So this has, I think, caught the attention of insurers who you'd like to think would be based on data and an assessment of risks. It doesn't seem to have gone that way, because I've looked at the data. Standard e-bikes that I think most of the industry is invested in, there is a next to zero rate of these fires. Yeah. It's only when they're tampered with or kits are bought that perhaps there's an instance of it. And I think that there'll be a study out next year that will go further to prove it. What I do have at the moment is manufacturers like the Giant Group. They've never had an incident of fire. Some of the largest retail chains in the UK never had an instance of fire. I've spoken to, nearly 100 independents on this. Very little incident. If there is one, it's where a customer's brought a bike in that is unverifiable. So now we have a situation where the insurers are essentially refusing bike shops insurance, which that's a danger to every bike shop that handles e-bikes, whether they're a workshop or bike shop. So that's a really tricky issue for the industry to resolve. It's not one of its own creation, I don't think, but nonetheless, it was described as an existential problem by the trade body just a week ago. So, I'd like to see a few more people pick up on it and report very accurately what an e-bike is and the benefits. We should be talking about the benefits. We're wasting a lot of time talking about things that are essentially misinformation.
It's perhaps the loud minority that gets all the press attention, and the real benefits of the e-bike are then not really communicated.
I think if we've learned one thing from the past few weeks, if you don't control the narrative, things can get out of hand quite quickly. I think people can guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah, very good. Another question I have is, what is for you the major tailwinds and headwinds for the cycling industry in the next 5 years? So it's a kind of very broad question, but if you can pinpoint like one or two that you can think of.
So headwinds, we just covered the misinformation thing. I think the bike industry, if we can collectively get back control of our message and reach the masses, we can change the record on what an e-bike is and isn't. If we fail to do that, then we've seen knee-jerk regulations before, which could risk the market. So that's probably a headwind. I think I wrote something not so long ago for Cycling Industry News as a guest piece. I don't know that it's talked about much in the industry, but climate change, I think, has the potential to upset the way we do business, upset the optics of whether you'd want to cycle on the street if it's either too hot or torrential at times. That's very much a problem I picked up on Eurobike last year, having dinner with people from across Europe, suppliers saying, this is on our doorstep now. So, that hurricane that went through Florida a few weeks, the Helene hurricane, took out a hell of a lot of bike businesses, but it ended up also taking out one of the world's largest semiconductor sources. So that for electrics is quite a big deal. Things like that, whether it's a Suez Canal blockage or anything that just...
It has the global repercussions.
That's it. Has global repercussions. So that's an underrated threat. I don't know, I'd say underrated, but I don't see it reported as being a bike industry threat too often, but it is. I think it is. Tailwind, I think, and this is going to cause problems probably, but I think tailwinds, the Labour government is looking a lot better. They didn't have to look much better. The last transport minister was a conspiracy theorist. I think that's on record, so you don't have to edit that bit out. Louise Hay looks like she gets it. I saw a Transport Select Committee hearing yesterday. She was talking about things like pavement parking, about how the quality of cycle lanes is not good enough in the UK. I think they get it. I also think they're under some budget constraints, but the fact that they've reversed the cuts, not necessarily to the unprecedented level yet, but I think the sentiment has changed, and that counts for so much.
Very good. That's a great insight, Mark. Thank you. So I have one last question. What is one thing that you do every day that enables you to perform or work at your best?
Actually, this is again a bit of a left field answer, but tune out. I at the end of the day, I focus on other hobbies. I tend to just pick up hobbies and learn new things that are unrelated to cycling in general, which I think goes some way to keeping my brain sort of active and seeing the bigger picture sometimes of what's going on around the industry that will affect our industry. But, just other things. And
Being
riding
curious.
the bike, obviously riding the bike.
Yeah, brilliant.
Not thinking about it while I'm doing it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark, for your time.
Thank you for listening to this quick interview. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopez. You can find me under my own name on LinkedIn. You can find Ride to Success on all socials. And let me know if you like this format of shorter, snappier interviews with guests within the cycling industry. And if you like the show, please give us a review, follow, helps us to create better content and bring more guests to the podcast. Make sure you tune into the next episode, which will be released shortly. Thank you for listening.